We might as well get started. Welcome back to session 9. This is the last of the sessions, and I think we've done pretty well to get to this point. As you can see, this session, I will be talking about the jury room procedure. So it's just a matter of me methodically going through what you, as an apprentice, you're going to expect in the jury room. And then if Bernie comes in after that, I'll get him to talk about confidentiality in the jury room. So the jury room procedure that I'm going to talk about is pretty much the procedure that's done at full and half nationals. Probably a slimmed down version is done on a one frame, and maybe at state level, almost none of this gets done because you've got a small team and you can manage it between you. But the procedure that I'm going to show is what we follow, and it's a reasonably strict procedure because we need for the formalities to get done. We need the judging to get done in a timely manner. We need a Palmaris to be printed for the awards ceremony on typically on the Saturday night. So it is important that the actual procedure gets followed to the letter and in a timely fashion. So let's start with the beginning. So the beginning is you're going to be informed that we're going to meet. It might be like in Canberra Wednesday at 12 o'clock. So as jury, you need to be there not just on 12 o'clock. You need to be there 15 or 20 minutes before. Find a chair, settle down, because we're going to start on time. So if it's a good chairman and the meeting's at 12, he'll start at 12. So the jury will commence at the time, and the jury chairman, he does the most difficult part, and that's calling the meeting to order. Then what he does is pretty much hands everything over to the secretary, who then runs the whole lot over through. So the first thing the secretary will do will make a roll call. So everybody that has to be there must be there, and their name will be put down in a list, and the secretary will call your name. So they normally starts with the chairman. Is he here? He says yes. Secretary's here, assistant secretary, and then team leaders, etc. So that's the first roll call. Now, on the roll call, you're either going to be present and marked as present, or you're going to be marked as absent if you're not there. Now, there's two reasons for being absent. One is the chairman has given you a duty to do, and that's why you're not in the jury room, and that's fine. Or you just haven't showed up on time and you'll be marked down as absent. And if you keep doing this, then of course the jury assessor will make note to the APF to say that this person doesn't respect the time of the jury, doesn't turn up, either didn't turn up or doesn't turn up in a timely fashion. So coming in at 5 past and saying, look, I'm sorry, the traffic was late, not acceptable. We haven't got time. You make time to get there. So the roll call will include and record all absentees. So following the roll call, jury chairman will address the jury. So the first thing he's going to do, let me just shrink myself down here. Right. Let me just get back. So the first thing he's going to do is ask the jury to introduce themselves. So some chairman will say, please, as you go around the table, stand up, who you are, what you're judging. And so that way the whole team gets to know everybody, because we're from different states. We may know most of the people, but there's always new people. And like yourself, it's going to be there. Then the chairman or the secretary will identify who all the team leaders. So he might say Ian McMahon, team leader for stationery, Glen Stafford, team leader for trad, team 1, etc., etc. Then the apprentices will be identified, and it's important that everyone knows who the apprentices are. There will be a brief general jury room procedure, emphasis on confidentiality. From the time that starts to the time that finishes, the jury's dismissed. Nothing can be leaked out of the jury room. Everything's very confidential, because until it's finalised and the medals are allocated and we've all agreed on them, nothing gets sent out. And then we invite the jury secretary to brief the jury. So what's the jury secretary's going to brief? Well, there's quite a few things that need to be discussed. The first is security arrangement on the jury room. Typically, the chairman and secretary are always in the jury room. However, there are times that they need to leave. And if there's no one in the jury room, then the jury room will be locked. And you need to be aware of this. If there's someone in the jury room, then the security can be kept. The day's timetable and deadlines will be announced. So it'll tell you when all the calls are going to be, when you're expected to be there, when roll calls are going to happen. We'll start talking about refreshments. Typically, there's tea and coffee and juice in the rooms, or if there's a cafe, or you might have a ticketed system where you can go and get a coffee from the cafeteria, etc. All that will be explained. Of course, the most essential for me is to know where all the restrooms are. Then we are going to be told what is the dress requirement. And typically on the first or second day, there will be a jury photograph, and we will ask for a tie and a jacket to be supplied for the men, and the women to be in smart dresses or smart outfits for the jury photograph. And typically that photograph is put into the Palmaris or other documentations. There's also there'll be timing, so a lot of times the jury will be working late, and there'll be transport organising to get them to and from the venue, so that'll be explained. There may be you'll rock up and there's additional things you may need to attend. The chairman might feel that everyone should be at the opening ceremony. If we've got a special guest speaker or something, or a minister, it's always nice to do something like that. If there is another organisation that's hosting something and has invited the jury, then you may be told about that as well. And that is also dependent on whether we're going to have enough time to attend those functions. Also, if there's any change in paperwork, etc., then that's going to be explained. All right, detail of information held by the secretary and its availability. So they'll have entry forms, they'll have the previous awards, and a whole range of things that the secretary has. And that'll be explained that they have that up there. There'll be a judge's assessment, and the secretary will tell you what's required. Some judge assessors will ask that at the end of when the jury's dismissed, that you need to come in for a 10-minute interview. That may be the way this is going to happen. Or the assessor might just come up and assess you while you're judging, so you'll be explained on what's happening there. The role of the team leaders in assessment, because they also get assessed, and also the team leaders will be assessed by the chairman. Assignments of the apprentices will be given out. So at this stage, the chair will make sure that the team leaders know that at least 3 of the exhibits, the apprentice needs to go away and judge by themselves and then come back. So that needs to be explained to the apprentices and the team leaders. And team leaders and apprentices will have a separate briefing. Normally, once everyone goes out and starts judging, some of those team leaders and apprentices may be called back from with the chair to just go through the whole briefing, etc. And of course, the secretary will ask how to fill in various paperwork. We'd like you, when you're recording the marks, to be legible. All those marks have to be inputted into the computer, and if they can't read what you've written, then they need to go out and chase you up and find again what's doing. So they'll explain to be very legible on each of those forms. Remind the team the need to identify prospective awardees. So we will look at in your class probably a best in class nomination, and if someone has done very good research or material is exceptional, then we can look at felicitations. It's also up to the secretary to check if felicitations can only be given once to an exhibit. So that needs to be checked. The secretary will also explain the procedure if we're transferring an exhibit. So, for instance, the trad team's gone out and they've had a look, and there's no stamps in this exhibit, it's all covers, and they might consider it more of a postal history than trad, then the transfer system needs to be explained. Questions from the jury on any matters pertaining to the jury work, the timings of all the roll calls. So it's important that you note down every time you've got to be in the jury room for the roll call. And if I'm the chairman or secretary, I always emphasize that there's a collective nature when making all decisions on each of those exhibits. So some people think, no, the team leader has the final say, and they do, but it's still a collaborative and a collective nature for all decisions. And send the jury work with the best wishes to clear. Oh, I forgot what I've said here. Just hang on a sec. Send jury to work. Oh yeah, so we send the jury out at all times with the best wishes and say, all right, let's get stuck into this. All right, so what do we expect so what are you guys are going to expect at an apprentice briefing? So it'll include the team leader and the judge's assessor. You might as well get started with getting assessed by the judge's assessor. The first thing we should do is put you guys, the apprentices, at ease, welcome you. It's the beginning of a long journey. You don't do one apprenticeship and then you know it all. It's a long journey, and you need to know what that's all about. The system will be used to assess them, so that's to be explained. So typically, we will ask the team leaders to allocate 3 of the exhibits. They'll go off. They'll judge them themselves. They'll come back. They'll act like first responders. So they'll walk you through the exhibit. They'll tell you what their marks are, and then collaboratively the jury team will finish off the assessment. And what our expectation for an apprentice is to be within 1 medal level of what the group decides. So if you've decided that it's a large gold and the whole team thinks it's a bronze, we've got an issue. But if you've marked it a large vermeil and the team is a vermeil, then we're pretty much happy with that. So 5 marks is the target. And then if there's any questions by the team leader, might be a new team leader, might be their first apprentice, and the apprentice to be sought, and answers from the chairman to the satisfaction of both team leader and apprentice. So first call, what does first call mean? It means that the team has gone out, all the jury have gone out, they've started judging, and the chairman has decided by the end of the first day, I need to see where everyone's at. So they'll have a first call. And the first call is basically going to all the team leaders and saying, what have you given for each of the exhibits? So they'll call out the exhibit title, and they'll call out what medal level that they've allocated. And also they'll just say how many they haven't had time to do. There's a whole range of things. So let's just go through. So the jury timetable will indicate the time of the first call. And typically the first call may start at the end of the first day, just so the chair and secretary can know where the teams are at. And if they find that 2 of the teams have only in the first half a day judged 2, and they've got 13 more to do the next day, then we're in big trouble. However, that's not uncommon, because judging the first 2 often sets the pace and how we're going to judge it all at the end of that. So the first call will commence with a roll call. So we want to make sure that everyone is actually in there. And again, that's a mandatory. Everyone has to be there. So team leaders in turn, in order of the catalogue entry, will call out the points and the medal level. So everyone will have a catalogue, and typically people are writing down, and you should do that as an apprentice, what has been on the first call of each. So you start to get a feel of everyone's exhibit and where they're going to be pointed. The secretary will keep a record of this call, and the team leader will provide a list of any provisional results to the secretary. So as soon as, if they've done their first 6, they can hand in those results. The secretary and the secretary assistant will start doing the data entry. And what this allows us to do is to be able to, at the point that we've done, print a large printout and put it up on the wall so anyone that's missed the calls can go back and start seeing what's happening. So team leaders will be able to change their assessment at any time before the second call. So just because they've called a large vermeil and the points to go with it, by the time they've gone and finished all their exhibit, they might go back to the first couple and reassess it based on everything that they've judged. So it's not a final call, it's just a first call. And there really should be no arguments because we're just setting the pace for the results. However, as if you've got a concern about an exhibit that's been called, as an apprentice, you can't do anything about it other than to inform your team leader. If the team leader thinks that the apprentice is right, then they may go and talk to the other team leader. That's more the way, rather than an argument, no, that can't be right. You know, that's done publicly. This is done from team leader to team leader. So at this point, any of them that needs to be transferred, then it can be challenged at this first call. So therefore, we can say, look, you know, we've had a look at this one. We've tried to judge it. It's got all mint stamps in. We don't think it fits postal history. We think it's better for. So this is a time to start mentioning that. And then the chair can say, all right, trad team, can you go out and have a look at it and see what you think? So the chairman will request relevant team leaders to examine something that needs to be transferred. So no, we're not talking about a dispute on medal levels. We're talking about whether this has been judged in the right class. Now, two things can happen. One is the exhibitor has not read the prospectus properly and has put the wrong class for it to be judged in. This is a common thing that happens with new exhibitors, and so this solves this problem straight away. The second thing is sometimes an experienced exhibitor is trying to get upgraded into another class to improve these judging abilities, and he's trying to say, look, I think this should be an arrow, but it should really be in postal history. It's up to the jury to make that final determination. So, and if there's any disputes, the chairman will decide how and whom the exhibit should be judged. So if the two team leaders can't agree, then the chair will say, please, we'll make it trad. Please judge that. Typically, if you're a good chairman, you just ask for the two teams to judge it. You look at which gives the better score, and then you'd leave it in that class. That's typically so. Particularly if there's a medal level difference, that's fair on the exhibitor. Special prizes. So the chairman's already briefed the need to identify. So as you're going along, let's say you're doing all of trad, and then you've got a couple that are large goals, but one's scored a better point. More likely that's going to be best in class for your class that you're judging. But don't forget about felicitations, and there may be other special prizes. Sometimes an organisation might want the best postcard in an exhibit or the best title page or something. Then you need to look out for these specifically awarded prizes. All right, second calls and objections. So we've now gone out with a bit of luck. Everyone's finished judging everything. We now have a second call. So we go through that same process. The secretary will call out the team leader. The team leader, in the order of the catalogue, will then call out all the marks and then all the points and medal levels to be called. Also, they'll note to the secretary that there's been a change, just so the secretary is aware that has been a change by the team. And the secretary will add all these results to the official listings. If there's an objection on a mark, it can only be done by a team leader to another team leader. This is the time that an objection will come up. And typically objections have already been sorted out because it's been noted on the first call and they've privately gone and talked. But if there hasn't been agreement, and an objection can be brought out by team leaders at this second call. Secretary will then read out in catalogue order all the points and medal levels that's been assessed on each exhibit. So this gives you a final chance to go through your catalogue where you've marked down all the points to make sure you've got it correct. At this point of the second call, we'll sign off on all medal levels, including large for May. So what we're saying is, as a group, as a jury, we all agree with everything that's been said about these exhibits up to large for May. So once you've agreed, you can't go out to your best mate and say, I disagreed with the jury, because you've just called yourself a liar. You either agree or you stand up and complain at this point. But we all sign off on everything up to large for May. The secretary can also put up challenges at this point. Secretary also will check the proposed awards and if it's within the 2 medal levels that it's got before. So what will happen is someone has worked really hard. They've got it up to a gold. Previously it was a large silver. We're not saying it's not worth a gold, but the secretary will say there's been 2 medal levels differences from the last results. Just confirm that you're happy with the medal level that you're allocated. We're not challenging or stopping people from jumping several levels. All we're just saying is we're making sure that we haven't made a mistake. Now, it could also work the other way. You might have had a gold last time and we're giving you a vermeil, then that's 2 medal levels difference. Then the team will be asked to go out and just check that that is correct. The exhibitor may have totally changed the treatment and screwed things up or have improved it. So it could be that it's actually gone down. This happens sometimes. Also, if someone's put in an exhibit 20 years ago and they got a large gold, on the standards of the exhibitors, each year is improving. It may only get a vermeil 20 years later, because if they haven't changed anything, the status doesn't stay. So that's something else to be wary about. The finals also, this calls also the final opportunity to nominate for special prizes and felicitations. Hopefully the felicitations were sorted out, but now that everything's been judged and the second call's gone, we know who should be best in class for each of the classes nominated. Now's the time for us to go out and view all the golds and large golds and that have been nominated. And so everyone will go out and have a look at them, and then we'll come back. So on the third call, the team leaders will announce the results of any challenges. So that's now finished. Sometimes the result of the challenge requires changes in the special prizes and felicitations. So it's something that we've got to be wary of. The results of the challenges are called, and then we call the gold and large golds. And if there's nothing challenged on that, that'll be finalised. So basically, we're voting that every medal level now is agreed upon by everyone in the jury. So you can see why we spend time for teaching each of the new jurors about all the classes, because you're putting your hand up to say, I'm happy, I'm comfortable with every medal level that's been given out in this jury. And you can only be comfortable if you understand each of the classes. So a person that says, I'm only ever going to trad, that's all I'm going to worry about, that's fine. I hope you become a very good trads judge. However, in the jury, you're still saying that I agree with all those results. So at this point, we will look at Grand Prix nominees. So in the final deliberation, we'll read out a list of points, medals and awards. This is done to assure that everything's agreed on the awards. Then there's an opportunity for any omissions or corrections to be done. Then we're going to select the Grand Prix. Let me just come back for a minute. Okay. And so there's 3 awards in the Grand Prix. So we've got the Grand Prix of the exhibition. So this is the top gong, the best exhibit out of everyone that's there. Then we have a Grand Prix, which is the best of all the international exhibits, so anything outside of Australia and New Zealand, and the best Australian New Zealand exhibit for best national. So there's 3 classes for Grand Prix, and nominations need to be made on each of those. So typically, for selecting 3 in the same in each case, the chairman will call for nominations. So Ian McMahon, Postal Stationery, we believe that we've got the best for in show. We want to nominate that, so then that nomination will be taken down. In most times, there's 2 or 3 exhibits that could be best in show, could be best international, best national. So there'll be a vote on each of those, and the chairman will seek the nominations, and then he'll ask the team leader that he needs to speak on whichever one he's nominated. So if a team leader has nominated the best thematic to be best in show, then the chairman will ask for the team leader to talk on it before the votes. Now, once 3 of each of those categories are nominated, we'll give time for the team leader to prepare a 5-minute talk on the exhibit, and it's totally about the exhibit, nothing about the exhibitor. So then the team leaders will talk on each of theirs. The chairman may then give another opportunity for the jury to go out and view each of those that have been nominated and looked at, and then you'll come back and then you'll be asked to vote on each one of those. So how's the voting done? Well, it's a secret ballot. We don't get you to raise your hand. So first of all, the chair will appoint 2 scrutineers, and typically they're the apprentice or the probationist. Why the apprentice? Because they don't get a vote. The probationist does get a vote, but not the apprentice. So what will happen is the secretary will he'll count out how many jurors. Let's say there's 21. There'll be 21 ballot papers. Then they will do a roll call, and the apprentice will then take that 1 ballot paper to each of the people that have been called. Then you put your vote on that ballot paper. Then a roll call again. The apprentices will pick that up. The secretary will have them all. Then they will count that there is the 21 votes, and typically they will then go into a sealed envelope to be drawn out at a Palmaris, so no one will know who the winner is for that. So the only time you really know while you're in the jury room before the Palmaris, if there is only 1 nomination in each category, then it becomes quite obvious. So it's important that there's a sealed envelope. The chairman gets a second vote, which is put into a separate envelope, just in case there's a tiebreaker, because nothing worse at a Palmaris is they've got 2 people standing there and they've got equal votes. What do? Then we pull out the chairman's vote, and that becomes the winner of the. I don't think I've been to one where we've had to use the chairman's vote, but there's always that possibility. At this time, if we've got an expert committee, then they will then give a report to the jury to say what they've found, and anything that they want to comment on. That expert committee's report will also be given to the APF. So we don't always have an expert committee, but if some deliberation needs to be done on an item, then either the chair will select people to do it, or we've pre-nominated an expert committee. All right, so we've finished our judging. So what needs to be done? So still the written critiques. So the written feedbacks need to be done, and they need to be completed. And they need to be completed before you give the verbal one, so we can then hand them in to get printed, along with the certificates and the medals, so they can be then given to the bin room people to hand out to the exhibitors at the end of the show. The medals will need to be assembled. We have one medal which we engrave everybody's name on, and then the actual level that they get, that's an insert. So it'll be a gold insert or a silver or a vermeil or a bronze. Now, for those apprentices, which will be you guys, typically the apprentices do this job. So nothing's beneath an apprentice to do. Also, the awards need to be posted. So ribbons typically will go out on each of the exhibits. This may be done after the Palmaris. It may be done, just before the Palmaris to let everyone know. But that means going out and putting a ribbon which will say vermeil or silver special prize or felicitation. So all of that will be out there for the general public to see. Then the allotting of individual prizes. So the chairman's been told there's 7 or 8 prizes. These are them. All right, we've got best in trad. Then a team will say, okay, this book from Phyllis Library is what we'll give to the best in trad. So that the actual prizes get allocated. Report for the jury will be put in the Power Morris, which is basically the chairman's report. And the Power Morris document should be proofread because there's always errors. And, you know, the first thing an exhibitor does when he opens up the Power Morris is look for his name or her name and their exhibit and their award. And as soon as they find a mistake, they tell you straight away. So the best is making sure we get all that stuff read. So additional tasks that needs to be done. So there needs to be a supervision to make sure all the certificates, the names are spelt correctly. The Power Morris events is all organised. Then after the Power Morris, we conduct the oral feedback, which is done in front of the frames. And we will practice oral feedback during the face-to-face session in Canberra. So discussions with the exhibitor. Typically what I would ask is that everyone gets no more than 15 minutes and that we move on. If you've got time to make an appointment so people can go away and come back, that would be more preferable. Sometimes you'll have everyone in all the trad exhibitors that you're going to give the feedback to follow you around to everyone, hoping they're going to learn something. You must ask the exhibitor, are they happy for everyone else to hear the feedback? I think that's just politeness. Most exhibitors don't mind, but on the odd few, and they're the ones that want to argue about what score you've given them, they'd rather someone not be there. So please do that. Discussion with the judge's assessor needs to be done. The completion of the chairman's assessment, etc., needs to be done, and any other report needs to be completed as well. So these are all tasks that have got to be done before we go home. So the best part, discharging the jury, right? So collective responsibility of all jury is we've all agreed on the awards. So that's the first thing that before we can discharge the jury. The need to complete the confidentiality of the jury room discussion. So every discussion that's had in the jury room cannot be outside. And hopefully Bernie will be here to talk a bit more about that. Because sometimes a gold's given, then there's discussions and it's downgraded to a large for me. Well, nothing worse than going out to your mate and saying, oh, you should have got a gold. They wanted a gold, but Joe Blow talked it down because he doesn't like you. That's not going to happen. All right. So all you're going to say is, I agree. When your friend says, I wasn't happy, I said, look, I'm sorry you're not happy, but we all agreed and it's a fair mark. And that's what you need to leave it at. We're going to thank the secretary because the secretary really does a fair grunt of the work in the jury. All right. The chair gets all the credit. The secretary does the work. That's no different in professional life. We'll also thank the organising committee. And at this time, we might invite the chair of the organising committee into the jury room to thank him and on behalf of the jury, because they've worked hard all year to put this thing together. They've funded all the jury's airfares, their accommodation, they've sorted out all their meals, they've given them a Palmyra's ticket, and the show may even run at a loss. So at least the jury can thank the organising committee for the efforts that they've put in there. Then there's other courtesy acknowledgement. Maybe somebody drove the bus and you want to thank the bus driver, or someone has given us the overhead projector or brought the computers in. Then all those additional people should be thanked as well. And then the last thing is we'll thank everyone in the jury for their diligence and their ability, and we look forward to seeing them in the next time in the jury. So pretty much we've gone through everything from the beginning of the jury to the end of the jury and how the procedure goes. So at this point, I will stop sharing and we can open up for questions. And either I've given a very good explanation or you all think you're not going to do this now.
Just a minor one, Glenn. What
Sure.
exactly are felicitations?
Okay, I might ask Ian, have you got a good answer for felicitations, Ian?
Audio, Ian, audio.
I think he'll do that.
Friendly greetings or something.
Okay, so felicitations are given firstly for a couple of reasons. One is for perhaps the easiest to explain is for research. So if the person has got their medal or whatever, but if the person has shown in the exhibit clear high levels of personal research, then they will be recommended for felicitations for research. And if there are a number of people in particular who are well known as researchers, and that's reflected in their exhibits, and it's an additional award on top of their medal. And you can also get felicitations for material and other reasons, but it's something that goes beyond what you would normally expect in an exhibit. And felicitations can go to, doesn't matter what score it would get, like it may not be a top large gold medal, it may be of them, but for various reasons it may not get higher, but you're just recognizing these particular attributes. And as was mentioned, you can get it once at each level. So you can get it once at national level and once at international level. But it's worth remembering when you're judging to look out for exhibits that do deserve felicitations.
And Ian, is the second one for material? Because I've seen felicitations for exceptional material.
It's not as common as research, and I've seen there have been other reasons.
Yeah.
One for you, Glenn, if I can.
Yep.
If you're pulling a page out of an exhibit that's doubtful or something like that and taken back to the jury room, is it the team leader that does all that? Was it discussed between jurors or an expert expert committee?
So typically, if we're at international level, there's a whole procedure, and I think Jeff went through all of that, whereby, your commissioner would be watching, they'd pull something out of the frames. At national level, I don't think we pull anything out of the frames. I think we will look at it, we'll view it, we'll discuss it, and if we think something's not quite right, then we will just make a comment on the feedback sheet that, the experts have looked at it. We'd like you to get a certificate, or we don't think this is good. If we've looked at it and we're happy, then nothing is said.
Right.
I think I don't remember a time at national where we've taken anything out of the frames. Ian, do you remember?
Not taking them out of the frames. I haven't been present when that's happened.
I know in New Zealand we had an expert group, Jeff Kello. We saw some proof material, which it was proof, but I think it was described incorrectly. So we had a discussion. We said, yes, we think that's not quite the right proof that they've described. So it wasn't doubting that it was a proof, but you have die proofs, you have plate proofs, you may have proofs of essays. So it was just the description wasn't right. So that was noted in the feedback. So
very good. Excellent.
Glen, I've just got a general question to do with judges. It might have been more appropriately addressed by someone like Bernie, but integrity seems to be a quality that, is sought for the role of a judge,
sure,
or an individual taking on that role. And, it's been my observation over the last decade, or probably 2 decades now, that across the community, no matter what the role or the occupation, there's been a general decline in standards. And I wondered whether, in the administrative role of the APF, whether they've actually noticed any decline in standards or, questions of integrity increasing within the role of judges, and how the APF might deal with that if there was an issue arise.
I think that's a very good question, Tony. So my involvement has been the last 15 years, and integrity is at every level. As I say, even when the chairman gets in, we start talking about, confidentiality, all that. And if we find someone doing something, then it'll get noted, the jury says noted, and that person may not be asked to judge again, or they might be black marked. So I think everyone appreciates what we need to do, and I haven't seen a drop in level. In fact, I see it reiterated time and time again in the jury, and then on each of these courses. So maybe we're one of the few industries where it is important. I've seen examples international where someone's come up to the chairman and thanked them very much for their large gold, and we're only on the first call, and you think, well, someone in the jury doesn't know what's going on, or it's an Asian thing. And what's worse is when they come back the next time and it's not a large gold because we've had discussions. So it then makes the whole system look bad. So I think you're right. I think as a society, things are changing, but I think we are still conservative. Stamp collectors are conservative. I think the jury is conservative. We do everything we can.
Yeah.
Will someone screw up and do something that's not right? Sure. You know, what's worse is, you know, over a few beers, someone might tell a story that's even better than the actual what happened. And then you've got to take that with a grain of salt. But typically, I don't hear too many bad things outside. Now, having said that, it's not as bad as that when you're in the jury room. Most people, it is very collaborative, will agree. And the odd time that they don't agree, just some discussions between a couple of people will often resolve it. So it's amazing. What's the word that we use in Asia? It's gentle. I'm trying to think, but you know, gentle agreement. We don't have arguments in the jury room. But of course, if there is an argument, then the chairman will make the final decision. I had to do that in one exhibit where there was two team leaders that were in one class, and so they judged their exhibits and they cross-judged the other ones, and this is quite common to do. And there was a disagreement on two medal levels, and they went out and they couldn't agree. And I was the secretary at that time, and I said, "Look, I'll make the decision, and that's not my class." And when they realised I was going to make the final decision, they went out and came back and final, you know, made something to agree with. So even just threaten to do it yourself often resolves the reason. So look,
there is a formal process that you haven't mentioned, which is the presidium.
Yes, of course.
So the jury chair can normally set up a presidium, which is usually the chair, the secretary, and one or two of the senior judges. And if disputes like that, if they can't be resolved, are resolved by the presidium. And I can certainly remember being part of the presidium that resolved a dispute similar to the one that Glen described. There were just two completely different opinions from two leaders. And in the end, it fell simply to the presidium. I've been on an overseas jury where the presidium just came along and said, well, by the way, we've changed all the marks of your team. Well, that wasn't true. It wasn't all. It was only a few exhibits, in fact. But we've tended not to use it unless we have to in Australia. But it's a mechanism that is available. It means that it doesn't all fall on either the jury chair or the secretary. But if a matter has to be resolved, it will be resolved.
Yeah, I guess you know, a large part of philately is based on tradition, and you know, when you look at, you know, even within our own lifetimes, not a lot has changed, and you know, but as the numbers decline of participants, if this were to continue, I guess, you know, there's scope for that sort of thing to occur. But what I was sort of driving at more is, you know, have there ever been instances of judges colluding with exhibitors to get an outcome? I know the stakes aren't that high in you know, in exhibitions, but for some, you know, it may be prestige or you know, there's some other benefit they hope to gain from that. And I just wondered whether, you know, there was ever any instances of collusion that you know, you're aware of.
Not in Australia.
Yeah, no, look, that's a fair question, and Steph's right, not in Australia, because you saw the process. Like in Canberra, what have we got? 20 jury. If three people are colluded to get someone a large gold that wasn't worth a large gold, there's too many other people in that jury room to say, "Hey, look, what's going on here? This doesn't meet half the criteria." I think you know. So I think it would be a little bit obvious. But are you talking about whether someone will get someone one extra point to make sure they get that medal they never had in the last? Well, who knows if that happens, because who's going to pick up 1 point? But I think jury would pick up 5 points if it wasn't right. And I think when you get into the process and start seeing, you'll see how well that works. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
The other thing that might be worth talking about, you said the APF. One of the things we are contemplating is putting a job description out for a juror and getting the jury to sign them when they become jurors. At the moment, there is no official job description. So it's hard to say to somebody, look, you're not doing the steps that you've agreed to do. So that is something we are looking at.
Now, having said that, one process we haven't talked about is the jury assessor process, which is probably where Bernie was going to come in, I suspect, because he's been the most heavily involved in it of the existing judges. And it is a formal process, and it does have the ability, if the jury chair or the jury assessor at a national exhibition became aware of some of the things that Tony was talking about, they could actually be dealt with under that process at that exhibition. After the exhibition, it gets a bit harder, but during the exhibition, that can be dealt with.
I think social media has probably played a big part in in other areas or occupations or industries, this sort of stuff coming to the fore. But I've not seen it happen with philately.
No, but you're right. It could do, because we do have quite a lot of people involved in social media. But there is well, one thing, if we do, for example, put the results up on the wall at Canberra, you're not allowed to photograph them, because some of us have been to Asian exhibitions where results, as Glen has said, have appeared before the jury has finished. But oftentimes in jury, we don't have a formal call in the way we used to. It's actually the results being pinned on the wall or printed out so people can read them. And there is a temptation to take a photograph and suddenly send it round to your mates and put it on social media. But that's definitely frowned upon.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
It seems, though, Glenn, that what you've just been through is a fairly standardised procedure, and they're trying to get a standard now. And I heard Steph say not in Australia, and I'm sure that's right. But your experience of international, does that standard seem to pervade through international, or?
And it's a bit more comprehensive once you get one, because you do have an expert group, and they will come out at the beginning and they will say, this is what we're looking for. We expect teams to be looking out for these type of things, and then we will then call the commissioner. So there is the next level up. But as far as the calls, the objections, the challenges, the transfers, that's pretty much the standard, is international as in national. So in Australia, we've pretty much modelled everything out as an international. We judge at international level. We just award a medal level 5 points lower. So, for instance, what you would get for a gold at international, you would get a large gold at national, but the points would be the same. And we mark it as if it isn't, because we don't want to send anyone overseas with an expectation that they've had a gold here at 90 and then they get 65 at international level. That doesn't suit anyone. So we make sure what you get here, you should get fairly close within a few points. So, I mean, if you go down 2 points international, that might be because there's more exhibits to compare against as well, etc. So,
when you're in a jury, whatever deliberations between you and your team and within the whole of the jury room is confidential. Now, that's very simplistic. So what does it mean? It means that all the discussion over different exhibits shouldn't be all shared with the exhibitor or with anybody else. One of the problems we have with new jurors is that hasn't been fully explained. And I think the best way to indicate it and to explain it is my experience of those who have unfortunately breached confidentiality. A new apprentice juror, at the end of before the jury actually finished, you will be given, as you know, you will be shown all the different points from each exhibit, and different people will raise objections between the teams and discuss them. And in this particular case, his friend only got a large vermeil and he believed it should have been a gold. So he went to the friend and said, they've treated you badly. Now that would have been the end of it, except the friend in his wisdom decided to email the jury secretary to complain bitterly why he got such a low mark. Needless to say, that apprentice juror never succeeded in that particular exhibition and had to try again. I had the unpleasant task of informing him he was not a new exhibitor. That's the juror, the apprentice juror. So what it means is you cannot share what's happening. So that's number one. Even after everything is finished and you're on the team, you can't say to that exhibitor, oh, you should have got 2 medals higher. You can tell him how to improve the exhibit, but you can't conflict with what happened if you were a member of the jury. Now, if you're the person in America, before you judge, they actually appoint a member of the team to be what they call the first responder. Now, this is an American term, and you've probably found it creeping into our vocabulary with respect to ambulance officers. The first one on the scene they call a first responder. That's where it comes from. If you're the first responder, you can't say the team gave it a vermeil medal, but I think it was worth a gold and I told the team that I backed you up. You have to stick with what the team determined, not what you want. So that doesn't preclude you from assisting the exhibitor, going through the exhibit and explaining it. Now, as Glen just said, I've just come back from judging in Hartford at the Great American Stamp Show. They had a jury of 14. 2 of those are what they call the FIP option, which means you can get a pointing that might help you go to a FIP show. Of the other 12 jurors, the secretary is not included in that, but he is also a juror, but he doesn't judge. They're divided into 4 teams of 3. Now, unlike FIP or FIAP or Australia, they judge everything. So there is not a team judging, especially the team judging revenue and a team judging postal history, etc., etc. You've got all sorts of stuff. My experience last year in Canada was that their judging, whilst it's the same format, is outstanding. It's quite high. If you don't get the points, you don't get the medal. In the USA, they're very much generous, I think is the word. They also have a propensity to enjoy displaying first day covers, as they call display class. But their first day cover class also includes the stamps. But first day covers without signatures are very popular in the States. Unfortunately, in my personal view, they're overjudged. And I hope we don't get that far here. Because I think what it does, it prevents an exhibitor from growing and getting better, because he's not really putting in the scholarship into the exhibit. Now, confidentiality, if a juror tells somebody else what's going on and you find out, you have an obligation to tell the jury chairman what's happened. You can't keep it to yourself, because there's a danger that if that gets out, it goes wrong. Now, it doesn't finish there. We've had some examples in Australia a little bit overseas. There was one major one in Brazil some years ago, where an American exhibitor did not get the grant award. And a number of Americans believed he would. And one, who was probably the guy who actually typed the exhibit from one of the big American auction houses, publicly complained how the exhibit had been shafted by the FIP. Now, regrettably, then some jurors came on board and started defending it in public. And the problem then is you've got to disclose how he got the points. And that, in my view, was a breach of confidentiality. So if that happens, you've got to say, I can't discuss that. That was determined. We have regulations and we've got to follow them. You can't then jump outside the box. So be very careful you don't get caught like that. Now, following Perth last year, I had a situation where an exhibitor wrote to me regarding something totally different. And in that correspondence, he then criticised the jury in Perth for giving Mr. X such and such a medal because it's worth twice as much as that. And, you know, it's really bad when jurors get that bad. What he didn't know, of course, is that I was the team leader of that particular team. And the medal that gentleman got was totally and utterly appropriate. And I did the feedback, and the exhibitor, in my view, admitted to me that I was right. That it didn't have in that exhibit information that was recently in the market that should have been in the exhibit. Now, I'm not criticising the exhibitor for exhibiting it that way, because there are some jurors who look at a little chart that they bring with them. Oh, he got a gold in Sydney last year, he has to get a gold. I implore you to be a juror. If everybody got the same medal as the last exhibition they attended or exhibited in, there's no point you being a jury this time, is there? Your purpose is to judge that in the frame as you see it. I'll give you an example. Some years ago in Taiwan, there was an Indian exhibit that got a large gold. Well, got a gold, but not a large gold. And certain Indian gentleman who was highly regarded complained bitterly. Now, in those days, we went down to the frames when there was a challenge. We didn't debate it among the jurors, which we do now, which is much better. And every juror went with us. And it was a pretty active debate. And it wasn't until after 30 minutes, I'm not kidding you, but for at least that long, that he suddenly realised, and he looked at me because someone whispered something in his ear. He said, oh, I'm very sorry. He sold all the early proofs out of the exhibit. They're not here anymore. So I didn't know that because he never looked at it beforehand. He just relied on the previous record. Now, sometimes when you're in a jury, you may get people come to you afterwards or in the jury room from other jurors and say, I think you've been very harsh on Ian McMahon. He should get twice the award. He's got it known as a large silver. It's definitely worth a large Vermeil. Be very wary because maybe it's not the exhibit that Ian got the large Vermeil for last time. I have two different areas with two exhibits with almost the same name. British Guiana Stationery and Guyana Stationery. If you're not familiar with the area, you might think they're the same thing. I have 3 exhibits of Ecuador stamped revenue paper. Why do I have 3? Because there's too many to fit into one 8 frame. So I have one period of 8 frames, second period of 8 frames, a third period of 8 frames. But again, you may think, oh, that's the same one that he got a gold for. In fact, it might be the modern one, which is much more common, nowhere near the rarity in some sections. So you misinterpret. So again, let's be wary. One of the problems you do have is, of course, as an ex-lawyer or former lawyer, my wife would sometimes say to me, oh, John asked me what's happening on his case. And I told him I haven't got a clue. Bernard never talks about work. That's right. I carry that into judging at philately. Be very wary what you say to relatives. Definitely don't mention names unless you're dead set certain your wife's not going to blabber. But I'm sure you've read situations where the wife has told somebody something else. And at exhibitions, it's not so much in Australia, but I know overseas, the women were pretty pally. And there's nothing worse than being told by another juror that his wife told him X, Y, Z. So if he's telling you that, it means who else is she talking to? So just be wary. Remember, it is confidential. What you have should stay in the jury room. Glen, I don't think I can add much more to that.
I think that's covered it, Bernie. And
that's about all.
I had a similar experience. I judged Postal History International, and we judged this Japanese postal history, pre-adhesive. We gave it a vermeil, and they came back and said, this has had a gold before, you know how the secretary. So we went back out and we had another look at it, and you know, maybe there were some Japanese covers that we didn't understand, but my point was they didn't describe them if that was the case. But the chairman said, well, look, we've got a Japanese juror. Let's just get him to come and have a look, even though he's not a postal historian. And he came out and he said, oh, yeah, this belongs to a Japanese dealer. And he sold all the good stuff at the last auction. So, yeah, I think your point level is right. So just because you're 2 medal levels out, Bernie's right, the exhibit could be a totally different exhibit. So as long as you're prepared to stick to your guns and you have reasons for it, I think that works out well. But sometimes you just got to find some evidence to back you up as well. But no, I think that's well. Does anyone have any questions for Bernie while I've got him online? Or do we have any questions about anything we've done in the last 9 sessions?
Come on, I've just walked 5 kilometres to get home. I haven't caught a bus for quite some time, and it's now 50 cents, but it didn't come on time, did it? You know? It's not funny, Glen.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I've done my week's exercise. I don't know why I paid the gym fees.
Bernie, why don't you say something about the judging?
I don't go to the gym. My wife does, but she said she's the healthy one.
Yeah.
The other sad news, some of you, well, Glen does, and Ian does. Peter McCann, he's not well. He had a triple bypass about 3 weeks ago, and it didn't go too well, so he never got to the exhibition. He is home and he is recovering, but he's not the best. Yeah. And he's the third American collector I know who's had a triple bypass. Steve Reinhardt had one a while back, and he's looking better slowly. But they're all very well disposed towards Australia, and I think I should share that with you. If you do know, 2 years
Bernie,
time. Yes.
Ian was saying we haven't actually covered jury assessor too much. Did you want to say a couple of things about jury assessing before we finish off?
Yeah, well, I can handle that. This was started by the APF probably 30 years ago. It may even be longer. It was not my thoughts. It came from Ed Roos from Canberra, and I don't think it was originally from Ed either. I think Ed got it from Commonwealth Government Service. And if there's any Commonwealth, Chris Smith might be able to enlighten me shortly. But I suspect that's where he got it from, that they were assessing people in their occupation as to whether they're up to standard or not. But he basically said we assess apprentices to have them approved, but we never assess jurors once they're approved. And he tried. So he drafted, with my assistance, of course, the first one we did. And I think he and I did the first one. It might have been back in Stampex in South Australia. That's over 30 years. And then since then, I've paired with John Moore. I think Ray Todd once, certainly Gary Down once. The purpose of it is to ask a number of questions of every juror at a particular exhibition. It only happens every 3 to 5 years, as to how you assess different things For instance, in presentation, do you start at 5 or do you start at 0 or do you start at 3? And where do you go, up or down? In other areas, we would ask you different aspects of why do you judge this way? Why do you not judge that way? We'd ask you things like what exhibits do you have at present and what exhibits are you building? And we ask that because if you're in philately, the more active you are in exhibiting, the easier it is to understand an exhibit when you're judging it. We also ask what exhibitions are you attending this year and next year? And if you're not, why not? Because you need to go and see other exhibits, hopefully to see your own up there in the frames, but also to see other people. There's nothing wrong with plagiarism if it helps you in your growth. You know, I've noticed the last 3 years, it's been big changes in title pages. Not always for the better, not everybody's getting better. But I've got an exhibit going away in a couple of months' time, plus a new exhibit for Canberra. And I've been at pains trying to improve my title page. I think I'm into the 10th bloody draft now, and I'm still not happy with it. And when I came back from the United States, I was determined to make it better. Only yesterday did I sort of suddenly get over the 3-day jet lag, 3 days to fly back, because nothing, so-called one world is not actually seamless. It just means you enjoy their lounges for 8 hours instead of 1.5, all right? So I was a little bit, I got back into Brisbane 2 weeks ago at 6, 8, or actually 5:30 in the morning, and my train didn't leave till 5 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's a long wait hanging around the city. Not a lot you can do with 2 bags and a backpack. Judge assessor is not anything you need to be worried about or concerned about. One of the things, though, that I was particularly concerned about in Perth was that because in 2 years ago, most of the different commissions changed their regulations and especially their guidelines. Some for the better, some hardly at all, as you will have learned in these programs that Glen's prepared for you. And I wanted them to understand that they need to read it if they hadn't. They need to familiarise themselves, because if they don't, they'd be judging exhibits incorrectly. So it's pointless if an exhibitor follows the new guidelines and the regulations, but the jury is still on the old ones. So for that reason, I think it's important the jurors keep themselves abreast of what's happening and what isn't. And one of the best ways, apart from reading, of course, is to go to shows and talk to other jurors, even if they're not judging and you're not judging, and to talk to them about different exhibits that you have an interest in, or exhibits that might win a large gold or a gold medal. Have a chat to the exhibitor. Now, maybe you've got a lot of comments about that are negative. That's fine. You know, not every gold or large gold exhibit makes you feel warm and fuzzy. And there are times when I wonder how the devil I wouldn't have given it a large gold and I wouldn't have given it a gold. And that's going to happen because it's not like a race. There's no time clock. So if anybody tells you about judge assessor, don't be upset. Don't be worried. It's something to assist you. It's not designed to say you are no longer a juror because you're not good enough. He did once make a recommendation to a juror that perhaps he might reconsider whether he still wants to be a judge. He actually then resigned and admitted to us that he'd been so anxious about it the last time he judged that he really shouldn't be doing it. So sometimes it's for a positive purpose. We certainly don't want people going to judge and getting anxious and worried about it. It's there to be enjoyed and a learning curve. So thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. I think Bernie makes a couple of good points. One is, as new jurors and apprentice, going to each exhibition and looking at other exhibits will build your abilities and confidence. Also, meeting other exhibitors and judges. Now, when you're on an organising committee and you're saying, okay, I want to put together a recommendation to the APF and these are the judges I want, typically you're picking people that you know are going to work harmoniously. Now, how do they know you if you don't front up to these things? So get known. More likely you're going to get judging jobs. We try to do everything on rotation, but it's impossible because if you're the only person that does postal history and no one else does, well, you know you're going to be on every jury. So that's why we ask you to make sure you get qualified in more than one area, one class. So that's number one. My experience is if you go and have a look at exhibits and you can see the exhibitor and you ask them, would you mind walking me through your exhibit? Exhibitors love to tell you about their exhibits and they'll walk you from the title page right to the end, and it's amazing how much you can learn. And also in the mind you're judging at the same time, you're realizing how much is not put on those pages that's known by the exhibitor, and that becomes fairly obvious when you do that walkthrough. So consider doing that. Go to all exhibits, do more than one class so you can be qualified. So all you need is a VMA, which you all got in one class to be on this apprenticeship course. And if you get a large silver or better in a second class, then you can judge in that class as well. So that's something to consider. So they're very good points, Bernie. I really appreciate those. So I'll open the floor again for any questions that you want to discuss.
I was sure that Daphne Bronte would be asking me something, but she's obviously a heavy bag.
Well, the same question she asks every time is not applicable to jury procedure.
Oh, right.
No, except how's Danielle coping, Bernie? How's Danielle coping?
I'm only having a dig. Chris, where's Chris? I can see him somewhere. Chris Smith. In the Federal Public Service or the Commonwealth Public Service, do they do periodic assessments?
Of your performance, Bernie, yeah. On a 12-month cycle, and usually I think on a 6-month there's a bit of a quick chat. But yeah, that you've got key criteria or specific tasks, and yeah, you've got to report against that or be assessed against that. So yeah.
I'd be amazed if it's, I mean, I also worked in a big corporation, and perhaps we could learn from some of that. One of the things that we used to do was called self-assessment once a year. And I think that might not be a bad thing in terms of getting people to assess themselves and say how they think they've gone for the year.
So what Steph is saying, and it's good, thank you for raising that, it may be that in the future we will revamp or revisit how we do our assessments, and we may in fact implement a self-assessment before they're assessed. So we have a document where they've made their own comments first as to different things. So that's one of the reasons they are debating and discussing things with different aspects come up, different concepts come up, different ideas. So they say you have a light bulb moment, but it's triggered by somebody else's button. So thanks, Steph.
Yeah, the other thing that it encouraged us to do was to get feedback from our colleagues. And that may not be a bad idea either.
What I found, well, is a public service experience was you didn't just wait until your annual assessment came up. You'd be having talks with your supervisor ongoing, or even a quick phone call or a quick meeting after maybe you've done some particular work, and you go through the pros and cons, or, you know, do we mess something up, or what do we need to do next time? So you don't leave it as a surprise from both sides, like the supervisor or the person being assessed.
There should be no surprises.
Yeah, no surprises. So I'd imagine this is the same situation in a jury, that ongoingly you're talking with someone and saying, hey, you know, I'm on the right track here. What about this? What about that? To get that feedback and correct course.
I actually think that's something we don't do very well, give feedback. I think that giving feedback is not a good thing. It's not handled well.
And even in my industry, when we do self-assessment, we tend to be harder on ourselves than our supervisor. So that's the system.
Then that depends on the individual.
Oh,
Some people who do self-assessment, it's 140% of their performance because they're just wonderful and perfect and they never make a mistake. I've had that with my own legal staff, trust me, right? The honest person will be probably quite critical and it's very positive, but the Donald Trump types, it's totally different. I'm just the world's greatest, you know. There's nothing I've done wrong in this job, and it's a shame all the others aren't up to my standards. So you've got to take it with a grain of salt.
No, that's true. Now, also for most of you are going to do an apprenticeship, a probation, then you'll sign the register, then you'll be a judge. So two things we run periodically as well. We will run a judge's refresher course probably every 5 years, and we run what we call a team leaders course. So those people that want to be team leaders, jury secretary, jury chair, will be selected on those courses as well. We've recently, in the last couple of years, done a team leaders course. Those sessions are also on the APF website, and you're welcome to view those at any time. I know a team from Hong Kong has gone through every one of them, and they've appreciated the effort that we've gone to put those online. So they're there as a resource. I recommend when a judge's refresher course comes on that you put your hand up to do it, even if you haven't quite qualified, because there's always new information and updates and new ways of doing things. So, all right, I think I'm going to come to the point where I'm about to stop recording. And first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating, because you guys are the future of exhibitors and exhibitions, because without new judges coming up, old judges tend to die after a period of time, and so we need to replace them. That doesn't mean I'll put you on a path to death. It means that you've got an opportunity to improve your longevity by being proactive in the hobby more than one way. So thank you very much for all your attending. I still want to see everyone's assignments. I'm looking forward to everyone who's going to be in Canberra for the face-to-face. Those guys in New Zealand that come to the Royal next year, then I'm happy to do it in front of the frames while the exhibition's open. If anyone wants to do that with us, they're more than welcome. So I'm going to stop recording. Again, thank you all very much for participating. I'm looking forward to placing all of you over the next couple of years in juries. And I'm fairly confident that all of you will pass your apprenticeship and your probation. So well done. Thank you for putting the effort in, and good luck on the journey.
Glenn, before you go, can I, on behalf of the group, thank you and all the presenters. You've done an excellent job as far as I'm concerned, at least. Yeah. And I'm sure everyone will support that. And it's been a great learning exercise. You can take a lot for granted, and just going through this process, even though it might have taken 9 sessions to get to this stage, it's been something that I think we'll all appreciate and will benefit from. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Look, Tony, much appreciated. I mean, people like myself, Ian, Steph, Bernie, we're involved in organised philately to keep it moving forward. Exhibiting is one way for the public to see what we do. These are important things to do. We do them at our own cost and our own time, but we believe in them enough. And if it wasn't for people like you to put your hand up to doing it, we'd be doing this for no reason at all. So thank you. Look, much appreciated, Tony.
Before you go, Glen, I just want to thank you for putting all this program together. I think you've done all of it on your own back, apart from the presenters that have been presenting, and you've done a great job. If those of you who are in Canberra in a couple of weeks, I'm sure that myself, Ian, Glen and Steph will be only too happy to have any discussions with you, or any ideas you have, or anything you're anxious about, you want to talk about in judging. Please feel free to approach us. The coffee's on you, of course, but that doesn't mean you have to pick one. But no, look, we're only too happy to share anything, any knowledge, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, while you're there. So use Canberra as a learning curve as well. I certainly feel pounding away on my exhibit. I didn't leave it too late. I've still been chasing stuff, and of course, not everything turns up when you expect it to, unfortunately. And I'm sure every one of you has had that
I know that.
Experience is sweating on something and it doesn't quite get there. Is that right, Ian? I thought you were agreeing with me. Yeah. The worst example I've had is something I was sweating on that's been lost in the mail. So that's something I can't do. But I've got the data on a page, but if you show it, I suppose I could put it in Canberra and leave the corner mounts on it like that, but then show it someone must have taken it while it was in the mail or something, you know. I've let the cat out of the bag now, so I can't do that. But again, Glen, you've done a wonderful job, and thank you very much on behalf of the APF.
Yeah. Thank you very
much. Glen, I also think that this is the sort of course, in not or the whole of it, but exhibitors would really get some benefit if they went and looked at their section.
Yeah.
I think that if we encourage exhibitors to go online and just have a look at how their class is judged, I think they'd get quite a lot out of it.
Mm.
I think that's, I'm in the process of looking at doing a couple of Zoom sessions on introduction to exhibiting, which means, it might be talking about how to put an exhibit together, etc. And for those who are interested in their class, then I would point them to those Zoom sessions definitely. So that'll make our life easier. But like everything, we're all time poor. So when I put a schedule together, I'll put it to the APF, and then I anticipate, probably winter months next year that we would do that. I've got demand here in WA to do it. So, and that'll be open to everyone, beginning exhibitors, someone who's never exhibited to experienced exhibitors, because I find at any of these courses, you always learn something. So anyway, I'm just going to stop recording now.